Thank you. Would you like to begin?
Yes. Well, thank you, everybody. Welcome to the Emerging Topics series in Economic Development, or Emerging Topics in Economic Development series. This is something that the Urban Economic Development Association, or UEDA, does every year. And I'm Christy Luzar. I'm the Executive Director of UEDA. And we are very pleased to be partnering with Sarah DeLyden and the crew here at Washington Park Media Center, Create Wisconsin, Rural Urban Flow, and Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation on today's topic, which is
creative. We're growing the creative industries in Wisconsin.
Yes.
Yes.
And so this is something that Sarah and I have talked a lot about doing over the years, is having a session just like this. And the purpose of these sessions is really to spur this collaborative thinking and sort of highlight some work that has been going on in different parts of economic development, and hopefully generate new things that come out of it, new connections. That is our mission at UEDA. We are a membership association of people and groups that work in economic and community development.
Awesome. Sounds like a fun job, Christy.
It is. I'm overworked and never bored.
Because for you, economic development, what does that mean when you think about Milwaukee, Wisconsin?
I think about all of the activity that we see in our community, but not even realizing that there's a whole economy behind and underneath it, whether it's the shop you visit in your neighborhood, it's the person that's driving your kids to school, it's the artist that created these really cool earrings that you just bought somewhere, it's the mural you find on a building, the art that is present in the park and things like that, the music that you hear. And so for me, the economic development is all of the work that goes on to make those things happen. And a lot of it is done not only by people who earn living by that in the creative economy, the creative industries, but also volunteers and people who just want these communities to be innovative and vibrant and all of that sort of thing.
Right. So economy is a complex organism. It takes a lot of different players to make it healthy.
It sure does. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to finish just a little more introduction. You're still good with me on the couch here?
I sure am. I can hang out with you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm Sarah DeLyden, and I'm co-owner here of Washington Park Media Center along with Wes Tank. We are a media strategy and production and training center located here on the near west side of Milwaukee, across from beautiful historic Washington Park across the street. I'm also a member of Rural Urban Flow, which is a network of cultural and agricultural producers throughout Wisconsin and also related native lands here in our region. And we really look, kind of one of our mottos is to look beyond neighborhoods and news feeds. So we're always trying to find common ground with each other, even though, we all can stay in our corners in Wisconsin. It can be, kind of a distant view and not always an accurate perception of each other. So we really spend time on each other's land. So I just want to note Rural Urban Flow. So again, name of our live stream, Rural Urban Flow, Growing Creative Industries in Wisconsin, sponsored today, and has for me been a big point of inspiration as someone who's born and raised in this region. I just want to also offer creative industries, like what is that? And for me, it really does mean the businesses. So for-profit, nonprofit, we even have government bodies that can be producers of creative works, anything in the arts, anything in design. But for me, also, it's all those other businesses too that just contribute to our sense of expression, our sense of place, how we understand what culture is for ourselves, and of course, our sense of creativity. So it's a very broad economy itself. Today, we really wanted to focus on what do the businesses need. So again, I'm just here as an example of a small creative business owner, partly through Washington Park Media Center that we're in. And we're going to have a few different sets of speakers. Again, we worked together to actually identify combinations of people we thought were going to be good to get together and talk about creative industries and talk about, again, what's the market development that we can all work on together. I just want to note that I have to thank one of our partners, Create Wisconsin, always helps me with my statistics. Shout out to Ann Katz. But, it's close to a $12 billion industry. Billion, right? Bigger than beer, biotech, paper making, right? But I feel like we don't always think about the creative industries in Wisconsin that way. And so, and even, another important statistic, just 89,000 jobs in the state of Wisconsin that could be identified as creative industry jobs. Yeah, it's significant. So again, part of what I'm always hoping for, and I'm really grateful for your partnership on this, Christy, is just wanting to understand the economy is there, but it does need some very specific things to keep growing. And I personally, as someone who's watched the Wisconsin economy struggle a lot in my lifetime, I keep thinking that there's a lot of hope to be had in more investment in the creative industries. And so I'm looking forward to getting into that conversation today.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when we think of economic development, I always think of it as going across sectors. So you have your private, your public, and then your social sector, and they're all very vibrant within each other. But where we really get that innovation and that supercharging that we're going to talk about is when all three are sort of working together. And so I was just thinking about that as you brought those statistics. Like when I think of economic development, or I go to other economic development things, it's always manufacturing and jobs and things like that, construction. But these economies we're going to be talking about are all the things kind of within that flow and around it. And so I'm really excited to hear again, thank you to our people who are going to be coming up and sharing their thoughts with us. We're really excited to just sort of get these ideas going and learn from it, and then see what we can do in 2025 with all of this great energy.
Yes. Okay, so thank you for coming up here, Christy. We're going to show a short video, just show you a little bit what we do here at Washington Park Media Center. This was done with one of our awesome collaborators, Imagine MKE. We have Katie Heil in the room with us, going to come up a little later, but this was part of the Reimagine Milwaukee campaign. So this launched for the 414 day. So again, Milwaukee area code 414 last spring. And in the meantime, I'm going to get Christy off her couch and our first set back on. If you'd like to watch on the screen, you can.
Milwaukee's a great place. We focus on the things that are not so great all the time, right? But we make Milwaukee what it is.
Great place in transition.
In transition. Ooh, yes. Ooh, that was beautiful. That was beautiful.
Some have referred to us as a flyover place, a Rust Belt relic. But that's because they haven't had the chance to call Milwaukee home. Head high, moving forward, gonna take it far, reach for the stars, gonna keep grinding, never stop, steady climbing, straight to the top.
For some reason here in Milwaukee, we're like in the future. So like we're kind of like this futuristic art space, because we have like the pace of the Midwest, but we also have like the ideas and thinkers that think decades ahead.
There's a strong enough culture to develop Milwaukee's creative thumbprint. I'm very in awe at what's been blooming lately.
People think larger than Milwaukee, then they'll operate larger than Milwaukee. But you can be from Milwaukee and do incredible things. This is just a different mentality.
Wherever we go, we're taking Milwaukee there. They see us representing Milwaukee and wave the Milwaukee flag, and everybody's like, Milwaukee, where's that? And yeah, it's a bridge.
I keep my head high, ain't no looking down. And if you look down, you probably still see the clouds. Keep my head high, ain't no looking down. If you look down, you probably still see the clouds. Keep my head high, high, high. If you look down, you probably still see the clouds. We embody a spirit of ingenuity, collaboration, and festivity. We gather and move with purpose and joy in our hearts.
It's not my imagination anymore that Milwaukee is happening, and we have a real cultural renaissance happening in different playing fields too, different sectors. And so then to me, that says, oh wow, we really have a future ahead of us.
The artists remind people that they can dream. Art is so adjacent to everything we do. So artists in Milwaukee play a really pivotal role in not only reminding people how to dream, but shaping the culture of this place, shaping the brand standard that is Milwaukee, Wisconsin to the rest of the world.
You know, we kind of got that big little city feel that makes everything possible. We feel inspired by the possibilities, and then collectively we take action where we actually see results, and you do that with other people.
We're not afraid of how others might define us. We are a creative community on the rise. A great place in transition. Together, we re-envision, rejoice, and reimagine Milwaukee.
That one gets me. Thank you. To thank Imagine MKE again for making the investment. This was kind of the showcase piece of many months of a media campaign. I mean, and whenever I watch this, I get aware of how many different creative businesses that we had contact with while we were doing the, any of those little clips that you see, but also our media team, like what it actually took. Again, we're a small but dedicated team to actually produce something like that. So there's a lot of people involved. Again, that is an example of one of the ways the industry is playing out here in Milwaukee. Okay, so I just want to thank my first set of guests here. Amazing, beautiful people. So what I'm going to do is I have just a key question to ask you. I ask when you speak that you just introduce yourself. And I know a lot of you wear more than one hat. So again, we're interested in who you are as a person today, as well as the organizations or businesses you represent. And we'll just have a little bit of conversation. So our first question today is, again, from your perspectives as local and statewide leaders in Wisconsin's creative industries, how do you see creative businesses connecting within and across urban and rural places to spur economic development and sustainable communities? Chela, would you care to start?
All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Marcela, but folks better know me as Chela. I currently serve as Executive Director at Walker's Point Center for the Arts here in Milwaukee, but I also have the privilege of representing arts within the state level with the Wisconsin Arts Board, and also at the national level with the National Assembly of State Art Agencies. So, it's a privilege to be able to talk about, all of the topics that impact not only the community in which I grew up and now live in, and obviously want to see the healthiest and strongest flourish. But I think to your question, representing and having lived in a very urban area, I think just being able to find the commonalities of what it means to, be a person in Wisconsin. I think that there's a lot of active efforts to try to divide and, just divide us and really not have that common ground of what really unites us as people. And, as, someone who gets to ask a lot of questions around how can we do a better job of serving you, whether it's, with students, whether it's with organizations that are functioning in rural communities or urban communities, I think Wisconsin's diversity of, folks that we have here, of the histories that they bring, are really that point of connection that, I think that as arts leaders, one thing that I find a lot of value in doing is when we're able to find those points of connection of, maybe it's through the food that we eat, maybe it's through, the artists that we see ourselves reflected in. And I think that's really important because, as a Chicana woman here in Wisconsin, it can be really easy to feel disconnected. So I identify with folks that kind of are finding, where do I plug myself into? And, there's so many beautiful organizations, people that really want to plug us in. And I think that that's one of the things of, opportunities when I'm looking at the way that we can slice and dice the map of Wisconsin.
Beautiful, Chela. Thank you. Delia, ready? Yes.
Just checking. Okay. So my name is Delia Kovac, and I work for the Office of Rural Prosperity, which is inside of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. But I think to be my whole self today, I also started out as an artist and I grew up in Milwaukee. And so I had a lot of strong experiences in public schools with art education, and then as well as amazing nonprofit organizations, including Walker's Point Center for the Arts. So I think that there is ways that when I am at work and thinking about economic development, especially in Wisconsin's rural communities and indigenous nations, I have a sense of that connection to culture and to the arts. And so I bring that forward. And so, I had the privilege of being in Bayfield County last week and got to experience for the first time some of their arts and culture, and really was able to say that, arts and culture is everywhere. And it's happening in urban spaces, it's happening in rural spaces. And I think especially in rural spaces, it gives a sense of community and home. And it's really critically important to support and foster a sense of community through the arts, and to show that, wherever you are is where you need to be, and you can have a strong cultural voice there.
Beautiful. Thank you, Delia. One of my fellow rural urban flowers here, Jay. Would you like to say?
Thank you. I'm Jay Salinas. I'm an artist and farmer and co-founder of Warm Farm Institute, located in Sauk County, Wisconsin. Our mission is to integrate culture and agriculture. Our work has always occurred along what we call the rural-urban continuum. So I was born and raised in the city. I lived in Chicago for about half my life, and now the second half of my life, I've been living in rural Wisconsin. So just because of those circumstances and the way that our lives have evolved to end up with this nonprofit, we have always seen the connection between urban and rural art and food and culture, and have worked deliberately to build bridges by using those art and culture as our tools, because food, first of all, food is fundamental, right? Whenever I get a chance to address people, I always make that point. Because it is fundamental, it's unique in its capacity to affect social, cultural, and economic change. So having a connection, the closer you get to the source of your food, the better you are, the healthier you are, the healthier your community is, and also that economic power that comes from that fundamental value that comes from the ground and is manifest in the food that we eat every day. But it's when we come together around that table, that's when culture rises, culture flourishes. And these are the things that unite us across our perceived boundaries of urban and rural. Like I said, we've always seen it as a continuum. We've never seen these frontiers, but the connection between those communities has occurred since time immemorial, right? Cities and rural places are connected. Usually we think of like the food and maybe even culture exchange. You know, there's a lot of land out there, so that's where most food production is. We find that in many cases that culture, a sustained culture, kind of really is sparked by that critical mass of people in proximity, and the polycultures that arise from people from different backgrounds find themselves living in close proximity to one another, and that wonderful tension that creates these sparks where a really vibrant community can arise. And vibrancy is a word I think I want to pause on here for a second, because we didn't start out looking at our work through the lens of economic development. We were looking at, wacky experiences for people who wanted to leave the city and view rural life. However, we found that it's because of the work that we do, where we sometimes bring thousands of people from other places to our community, there's a lot of economic activity that takes place. And we've never really, I shouldn't say for the first maybe 10 years of our work, we've never really concentrated on that. But when we saw it becoming much more prevalent, we decided to lean into that a little bit more. And so our work generated economic activity, and we've worked to help develop more what we call economic development. And that's reaching out deliberately to businesses within our community, but also across the perceived rural-urban divide to find opportunities to reinvigorate the trade routes that have always linked rural and urban places.
Well said.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, so I just want to locate it a little bit. You're an artist and you're a farmer. Yeah. Just to give us an example of part of how food works for you in your growing work right now in your community.
Oh, I mean, I almost can't separate myself. It's hard to talk about because it's been the immersive life experience that we've had for like the last 30 years, where a big part of my job takes place right outside my door in the field that I've been cultivating for 30 years. But there's also these opportunities for others to appreciate that. We host an artist residency program. So people come from generally urban places to live and work on a farm, and that begins to influence their creative output. I do want to talk just a little bit about rural-urban flow too, because that's a really critical part. That's this really deliberate effort to overcome our misperceptions, our cultivated misperceptions about one another, to find those things that link us and to build upon them. We're all about building bridges. Fuck walls, let's build bridges. That's I'm sorry, that's what we're all about here. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you brought up food. Chella, you brought up food. I always want to you know, I'm coming at this as an artist and a longtime producer of various kinds of art and design works for many decades already. So art and design is creative industries, but I always think it's important actually to get to that basic place of like our food, the clothing we wear. I mean, all this is expression of self, but it's also, again, expression of culture. Like, what groups are we participating in? And I want to thank you. I love that you're on the Wisconsin Arts Board. So again, to note, that's our state government's entity that actually works closely within the state budget, but also works with National Endowment for the Arts, our federal dollars every year. I just really appreciate that you make that investment. And I'm just curious from your work with that, you know, again, based here in Milwaukee, running a very important, long-standing cultural center like Walker's Point Center for the Arts. Yeah, like, do you have a hope with this about how you think this can go?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I think that one of the things that, you know, as a body of folks throughout the state that are representing the communities that are impacted by the legislation that happens, you know, the folks that we elect into these bodies of folks that are making decisions as to, you know, the investments that are happening in our communities is super, super important, right? And I say this because obviously, you know, local elections are super important. But I think that part of the, you know, challenge for us as a body that's trying to ensure that all communities throughout all the state have access to, you know, this access to resources. We talk about the diversity of our communities, of like who makes up these, you know, rural communities, these communities that are urban. And like I said, we can slice and dice them in different ways. But I think at the core of this is really our duty to understand the unique challenges that as a community we need to ensure that, you know, the people, I think always centering people will always yield in the best results, right? Because when we talk about economic development, I think an important part of this is also, you know, the community development that happens, that it's not just about the businesses, but really how, you know, that sense of belonging, that sense of who we are as identity, you know, are really reinforced. And, you know, I'll close with, you know, there's a lot of data that's collected, you know, throughout our state. The Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 study was just released, and it's reflecting data points from 2022 to 2023. But through that, we can see that for the first time at the national level, we're looking at indicators outside of economic you know, markers, that the fact is that, yes, it's important to prove that we have an impact in, you know, our local and regional economies, but also the fact that, you know, there's social markers that are also very important for the development of these communities, for the development, you know, of these industries, for the development of our region. And, you know, I think that that's the intersection that really, really interests me as a, you know, a leader, you know, within the creative arts sector at the state level, is finding those opportunities for us to really dig into, you know, those data points and continue to ask those questions in the communities that, you know, maybe have been traditionally funded for many years. I know there's some communities that had never seen a dime of our state money because, you know, of just, you know, loopholes of what it is to be funded for this money. So I think that there's a lot of really interesting trends that are coming our way. You know, I feel that one of the things that I always, you know, when I have conversations with folks is just to really be vigilant to the connections between, you know, our local bodies and also the National, you know, Endowment for the Arts, for example, that there's great leadership, great initiatives that are happening, and that obviously has an effect in the way that leaders at our state level are thinking. So continue to push folks to really think about ways to adequately support the needs that we see, you know, through our various diverse communities.
Beautiful. Thank you, Chella. Again, thank you for just being that leader at the state level that we really need.
It's my pleasure.
Delia, again, with another arm of our state government, with Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. Again, just want to note you're here as a neighbor, also in Milwaukee, but you're working through the Office of Rural Prosperity. Yeah, if you want to just speak to some of what you're seeing as possibility now for how we can get more of this connection to happen, rural and urban.
Yeah, and I think to build on what was just said, the part of the reason that my office exists in the first place is to be the front porch for rural communities into supports through the state and through federal dollars. One thing about rural communities is that they're all unique, right? So there's something that's often said, it's like if you've been to one rural community, you've been to exactly one rural community. And if you go, 5 miles down the road, there'll be something different. And so the thing is that each, a lot of the municipalities that we support have incredibly impassioned volunteers, but not necessarily a lot of staff, right? And so we're working with folks that are possibly, part-time village administrators, and they're trying to figure out how to do all of the things that a city does or a small village does, and then on top of that, figure out how to grow. So what we try to do as an office is to help with capacity. Capacity building is one of our pillars, one of our key strategic goals, and that is to sort of have those conversations with folks statewide and say, well, if you've never applied to a Wisconsin Arts Board grant, maybe that's something you'd like to try. And also, is there anything you need to get to the point where you're grant ready? And so I think that there is a lot of support sort of around, but not necessarily those like connective tissues that you've had with small communities. And that's what our office tries to do, is try to have those conversations like where are you? What would you like to see in your community? And how can we help you get there? So we don't necessarily direct, but we connect.
Amazing. And again, I appreciate you being located in an urban context here in Milwaukee. I often feel like Milwaukee as a city of neighborhoods, sometimes every neighborhood can also feel so unique and like its own small town. So, and I say this again, I have a lot of family that's still in rural Wisconsin. It's just a personal part of my life. I'm always navigating between the city and this more urbanized region and a broader sense of that rural life in Wisconsin. And again, there's these core behaviors, cultural, expressive behaviors that aren't that different if we want to choose and look for, again, common ground with each other. Well, I just want to thank my speakers here. It's been awesome to have you. We're going to go to another video transition and switch out to our second set. But thank you again, Jay, Delia, and Chella.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
We're the breaking the glass ceiling here, or the clay tile ceiling, or whatever you want to call it. So I think we're building bridges through the arts. There's enough walls that already exist.
Yeah.
Our projects are building bridges amongst the community, and I think that's a really good thing.
I just wish we as artists had more courageous people in the administrative levels that understand the process and give us the kind of dollars we need to do the work.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, it's just the lack of courage, because the dollars are there. The lack of courage for them to stand up and say, listen, this process is equally as important as the development of AI or whatever, but maybe they're coming.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so, because, when we put these up, whether they're indoor or outdoor installations, I mean, these guys are going to last for decades.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please come in. It's very flexible. Sit down. Just want to welcome my next set of guests here. Thank you all for coming and talking with me for a little bit. So this section, we wanted to focus a little bit, you're all network builders to me. I've been involved with Create Wisconsin, one of our partners here, with the live and live stream on something called the Regional Leaders Network. Angela and I worked on this together. An idea, again, of actually like we each in our regions play very particular roles, again, as art and creative industry leaders, but we also just often play roles, again, as community and economic development leaders as well. And so we just want to talk a little bit today about, again, from each of your network building efforts. Again, I'll ask you when you speak to introduce yourself and your networks you're working with, or yourself also as a business owner, as you would like. But we want to just talk about, why is a community of practice? So again, why do we as professionals, why do we need to spend time, even like today, having these kind of conversations? What's the value of that? Again, for-profit, nonprofit, creative businesses, perhaps others. Why is this so important for the creative industries and the places that we impact in Wisconsin? And I would love to start with you, my collaborator, Angela.
Thank you. Well, I'm Angela Damiani. I am the CEO of Milwaukee. We're an engagement agency that helps to build audiences for the organizations and the companies we work with. But I never say this. I feel like I identify publicly as a serial entrepreneur, which kind of like helps to make sense of all the stuff I've started in the last 20 years. But I actually think of myself more as a platform artist, and the thing that I platform on is network development. In each one of those entities, that's been the core of it, is helping other people set up new nodes of network. I have two answers for your question. The first is, I think, a little bit more selfish in that I have been drawn to wanting to build a community of practice because I'm just looking for my peers. You know what I mean? Like, I would like to, I think there are a bunch of people in this room who understand when I say, oh, I think of myself as a platform artist and what I do is build networks. But that's not something I would say like to, in a business setting. I think people are like, what? What's the service? You know what I mean, that you're selling? And so just to have the like fellowship in that, I think is really important because this work is hard and it requires a lot of you. And so to be with other people who truly can see you and understand you is really helpful. I think the other reason it's important in this moment is because we're living in the most divisive times we've ever lived in. We're living in a time where what is considered fact and truth is constantly under question. And the ways in which we convene as communities has changed and is constantly changing. And I feel like us being able to see new patterns in real time, what's working, what's not, where do we need to inject our digital lives to try to get people to convene in our real life lives. All of that feels like I've been doing this for 20 years, and the last even 5, every 6 months, something is new. A new tool, a new resource, a new way, a modality is necessary. And so I feel really keen on this because we're trying to figure it out. You know what I mean? It's not what it was. And so that's why I'm hoping. I'm hoping that's what we can help build from this.
Thank you. Lynn, yes, please.
Lynn Dixon Speller. I'm the founder of Edessa School of Fashion, well, one of them. And I'm also on the board of Milwaukee Artist Resource Network. To answer your question, I think that the reason we do this gathering, talking, networking is mainly for understanding and to fight the division and to make us all aware of what each other does. For instance, there are organizations here. I've known some of the leaders. I've known the people. I don't know what they do. And I think that it helps us with definitions to learn which box we fit in, which box we check. One of the things that we have issues with and struggles with is the fact that nobody understands what we do. They understand it's higher education. They understand it's a college, but they don't understand that it's academic and it's not sewing school. And that we are putting forth, we are helping people achieve baccalaureate degrees, which means my students study business, garment industry economics. They study psychology of dress. They don't just study sewing and drawing and these sorts of things. Those aspects put us in the artistic creative economy. They make us artists. However, the art that we create is part of the largest industry in the world, and that is second to oil, and that is the garment industry. You have fiber, fabric, and garments. And that all combined is the second largest industry in the world. We're also the largest polluter, but we'll get to that later. But it is a matter of, until I said that, probably half the people in the room didn't understand that's what we do. They also don't understand our needs because they don't understand what we do. Are we economic development? Yes. Well, your students, it takes them 4 years to get their degree. They're not going to be in the workforce until 4 years have gone by. The instructors are. The administrators are. The people who help support what we do are part of economic development. They work, they get paid. It's not just a matter of the product we put out on the shelf, which is the garments and the people. We bring people in to produce those products. Nobody asks someone when they say that I work in automotive manufacturing, how are you going to get a job in that? So but yet everyone in this room is clothed heavily. So that's what that's what makes us real. That's what creates the issues. I believe why we have to do what we're doing this very minute is so that we do learn and understand what each of us do and what the product is and how it affects the economy.
Yes, and I just want to know, and you also are a fashion designer.
It's funny because the fashion that I design is art. It's never wearable. I have garments in museums. I have garments that have been on stages, but they've never been on a subway seat. So that's the difference in what I do. It's big, it's glitzy, it's totally not usable. But oh, you did. Thank you, Katie. You did.
But opens up our sense of our bodies and how we're communicating again non-verbally through the clothes. I want to just say I always enjoy when I get to see you because your fashion is excellent. Always.
But it is,
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that it is nonverbal communication. It really is. And it is messaging in a way that I think my watch thinks I just fell down, but it's messaging in a way that none of us can always express. It's yeah, I think it thinks I just fell down. But it is a discussion that's happening non-verbally.
Yes.
And I am communicating through my garments who I am, what I do, where I belong, my socioeconomic, my demographic, all those things. So thank you for recognizing that.
Yeah, and again, I bring it up partly because, again, so I was born and raised in this region, but I've been in downtown Los Angeles for the last 20 years and went there, again, as an artist, having a career. I'm always, and I came from a rural culture where art was a non-concept, but I really thought over the years, like, where is those easy points of understanding, like the clothes we wear, the food we eat, which I also see as art forms just as much as I have with my own spatial practices. I work a lot with public art or public space design projects. So again, it's just back to like, how am I expressing self and how am I expressing the groups I associate to by a choice like what I chose to wear today.
And sometimes those choices are based on how much money we make.
Absolutely.
And that's a severe reality. It's, are you creative or can you go buy it? And that's the way it is.
Well said. Thank you. Katie, what do you think here?
Okay. I'm Katie Heil. I'm involved with Imagine MKE, which is a nonprofit started in 2019 in response to the fact that Milwaukee is the only city of its size without an Office of Arts and Culture. And we felt that we needed an agency to advance and advocate and amplify the incredible sector that we have here. And it was 100 people coming together in a collective impact model that created a strategic plan. And the only way we work is by connections and strategic partnerships. And I think probably the best example I can give of work we're doing right now that I'm proud of is, I think if we're going to advance and amplify this sector, which is either 49th or 50th in public investment consistently, is for policy change. And Imagine is the umbrella right now for the Action Wisconsin, which is a coalition of filmmakers, photographers, construction. It is a coalition of wardrobe, fashion designers, Sheboygan, Kenosha. It's the whole state is involved, and it takes that kind of collaboration, which recognizes what a collateral effect the arts have on every community. Whether you're talking about Worm Farm and people coming there and the economic impact of the arts on a community. I mean, you can go to the aesthetics of storytelling. To Chella's point earlier, I think the most powerful thing about the arts is storytelling and building empathy and community, and film is a powerful way to do that. I'm excited because we have a bill that's going to be a bipartisan bill proposed this January, and I encourage you all to visit our website, Action Wisconsin. It's set up, and Imagine MKE. It makes it very easy for everyone in this room to contact their legislators to advocate for investment in the arts for all the aesthetic reasons we've talked about. But it is the fastest growing economy and the least invested in this state. And frankly, it is becoming a problem. I mean, what we have in Milwaukee, we're blessed, but it is, there's a lot at risk right now because philanthropy cannot carry the load. So that's what we're trying to do. And it's all through individuals, strategic partnerships, not well outside the arts too. Municipalities, unions, they all recognize the value of investing and are partnering with us.
I mean, again, to make media, I can say as a media producer, the amount of kinds of creatives involved to get a short form or a long form media piece done, that itself already has complexity. But you're talking about, again, what's this larger economy like grow together right now? Because I'm with you that I just think it's one of the best economic investments we could make as a state, again, as well as how that affects cities and towns inside of it. If we would build tax incentives for filmmaking and other media making here and build out our film office at the state level. Yeah, again, this isn't just about what do the creative industries need. This is like, what does the economy of Wisconsin need? This is a really
it takes
place
it
to
much
look.
well outside the arts because we're really talking about tourism. I mean, you tell stories in Milwaukee, people want to come here. It's all about attracting and retaining talent. People want vibrant communities to live in, and we are leading talent here, not just in the creative arts, but talent generally. And it is a huge economic driver. But we don't tell our story well as a sector. Individual organizations do it well, but we have to do it together to get public dollars. And Anne's doing it at Create Wisconsin on the state level and imagines a partner in Milwaukee, but the film incentive effort is definitely a statewide effort.
Absolutely. And I mean, just to be clear, states around us have already done this infrastructure on the tax work and really seen the benefit. So it's not, again, me coming from Los Angeles, it's not even just about Hollywood, right? This is about, again, our landscapes, our places, our life, our food, our clothes, right? That's all part of kind of lying in wait opportunity, again, for film and media making. So thank you again for that important work. I actually want to go back with you, and again, as a board member for several years now with Milwaukee Artist Resource Network, which is a nonprofit that's close to my heart. When I was a young artist here in my 20s, I was around when it formed, and it really affected me. To Angela's point, it was an early moment of having peers, and again, asking a question of how can we strengthen our art and design making, but also how do we strengthen as businesses? So yeah, I'd just love to hear a little bit more about what you're seeing with Marn.
With Marn, I will say that Marn is currently in a major transition, but hopefully it's going to come out bigger and stronger. But it's a matter of us supporting the organizations that support the artists, supporting the organizations that help artists learn. Marn's mission is to help artists learn to monetize their art, how to create business from it, not just art, but bring art to the marketplace and to have it, develop, help to create economic development. And make it, some artists are proprietary about what they do with their work, and it is to help bridge that transition of you've created this amazing thing, let's let someone else love it for a price. And so there's so many things that can happen with organizations that support artists, is that it helps the creative economy grow, and it helps people develop livelihoods from working their crafts. And I think that the organizations, if they're all strategically placed and all accepting people in to help them learn these things, it helps all these things grow. But, that's just one organization. What I will say I found surprising about Milwaukee when I moved here, there are so many organizations that help the arts and help artists for us to be positioned in the place we are in the United States as far as art support is. It's interesting to me how many organizations there are that support these things and how many people support those organizations. But there always could be more. I mean, it could get better, it could get bigger.
Well, and I think you're pointing to the need for synergy, right? Which again, part of why Marn formed, part of why Imagine MKE
Yes.
formed, but what more can we do to do that kind of strengthening?
The organizations can begin to work together. I think that part of the problem is each one has their silo and they're doing their thing, and everyone's looking at, okay, if I want to do this, I have to help this one, and if I want to do this, I want to have to help this one. No, we don't have to pick and choose. We can help them all, and we can all do it. And I think we can do better if we collaborated more and did more together.
Well said. Angela, again, wondering, I'll just say first, you're one of my favorite serial entrepreneurs as well as platform artists. But again, we've had the pleasure of working closely through Milwaukee. It's been beautiful for me to watch it grow over the last decade. We did a lot of creative placemaking work together, so various locations around the city. And again, with Create Wisconsin, with the Regional Leaders Network, just kind of wondering if there's anything else you'd like to share from your perspective as a business owner who has really supported a lot of other creative businesses while you went to produce place-based work, experiential work. Just wondering if there's anything else you hope for in our network building today.
I think the place to start to answer your question is that we aren't set up as a network of practitioners. And that, I think, should be an objective that we share, because I don't know that we need to all collaborate together. I think, collaborate is a nice word, but the core of it is labor, and everyone is under-resourced. So I think that's the real thing. And we are pit against each other because there is only so much money that's going to go into all the things that we're doing. That said, there isn't a formal construct for us as leaders to convene regularly. And I think that should exist. We should decide, even if for nothing else, to be aware of what each other is doing, because to be able to influence the way that you're talking, Katie, long term, we have to be well informed first of what there is to do. And I think there is a lot to be learned, even as leaders in the spaces that we're all working in, around what you're describing around organizing, right? Like, most people are so busy heads down doing whatever it is they're doing, affecting whatever pocket of the community that they're in or the economy that they're in, that they're not thinking to look up from that map and to see on the horizon, we actually have to contact our legislators and be organized. And I think it's a pity to me that we are such an enormous part of the economy, but we are disorganized in such an intense way that we don't get represented, that we can't actually get what we need. But that's up to us. We just have to decide that we're going to convene in a regular way. And there'll be all sorts of other things that we could learn from one another, as a byproduct of that. So I'm holding out hope, whether it's regional leaders in the former construct or some future iteration, that can be where we go.
I think what you're saying just makes me think about how do we bolster each other too? How do we help each other feel valued because of the ways that you could say creative industries, but it's still, I would call us cultural producers. We're often on the edge of suggesting what Wisconsin culture can actually be. And that's not always a popular place. It's not always a visible place. But again, as peers, how can we give that to each other? Because, maybe even feeling really seen for a moment, really can breed to get to that market and network development you're talking about. Yeah. Well, so thank all my guests again here. Wonderful to speak with you. We're going to go to another video transition and we'll get our third group up. Thank you.
Kind of just wanting people to come and check out the school, see our facility.
And I know that when they went home and they used my products, they feel good.
We do wings and things. Best, freshest food, made to order.
Just for the moment. I really love what I do. It's such a strong passion. I am a byproduct of Milwaukee. Milwaukee made me.
The farm helped inspire us to do something different.
We just want to give a shout out to Brew City Match because they have helped us tremendously.
I enjoy seeing people smile. Our health is our wealth. So when we see people from the neighborhood that come in, our thing is we want to spread joy and bring people together.
I know there's so much to talk about, isn't there? Let's go to our third group. I realized I forgot to say these video interludes again, especially for those of you who are online with us. We appreciate you. We feel you in the room. the one right before this was from Rural Urban Flow. Actually, one of our neighbors' favorite artists and elder mentor for me, Munir Bahoudin, literally lives around the corner. He gave a great shout out again to why that government investment is so important for the arts and creative industries. And then we just saw Brew City Match. Some of us are connected through that. I just want to, this is a whole set of partners from around the city. Local Initiative Support Corporation, LISC, was a key provider. And I just want to note Brew City Match is a big reason we're sitting here today. They gave us grant, as well as city gave complimentary funding. We also, through Near West Side Partners, gave us that capital stack we needed to take this whole bakery and turn it into a media center. And we had to do a lot of talking about what is a media center to even bring in those resources. So I learned a lot in the process. I will just say that informs this conversation today. So I just want to welcome my next set of guests. This is one of my favorite questions. I have to give my collaborator, Christy from UITA, a shout out for some of this language. But the question is, how do we supercharge this dynamic work? So again, each of you is in a different leadership role. And again, over the course of your careers, because I respect how much you've been active for many years already, had different positions to the creative industries, again, invested and supported creative business owners in various ways. Just want to hear, what do you think, again, would supercharge all this dynamic work in the creative industries and actually make sure it's connecting well into local community and economic development efforts as you see it? Paul, you ready to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. My name is Paul Smith. I'm the Assistant Executive Director of the American Indian Chamber of Commerce of Wisconsin. That's a long breath. I'm also a Vice President of the Milwaukee Intertribal Circle here in Milwaukee. And I also started and sit on the American Indian Advisory Board at the Milwaukee Art Museum. It's the first of their time there. And they finally added Native art to their collection. So we're making lots of changes in the art world. In order for us to supercharge this work, the easy answer is social media. Everyone's on TikTok, everyone does that. But what's outside of that? What about those who don't want to be on those platforms or are not connected to those platforms? We had to find a different way. And after COVID, we had to find many different venues to connect. And that's where, the real work is. For me, the chamber, I have to go across all 11 tribes and go to every single reservations throughout the year. That's 11. That's from here to Red Cliff, up to the Bayfield and Oneida and everywhere in between. And there's many needs in the art world, and it's just about bringing those connections. We do a tribal toolbox tour where we bring many resources to the reservations every year. And that means government from the feds, state, local. It also means nonprofits. That also means other organizations to go to these reservations and say, hey, these are the opportunities here. And then the reservations and the folks on the reservations who live there say, hey, this is what we can do. And let's meet in the middle. And millions of dollars of contracts have come out of that program with the EDA, SBA, and folks from REDIC. We're able to make those connections. But you got to be there on the ground, and you got to be there to shake hands. And people, answer your emails, please.
Please. I mean, I think a lot of us have email boxes that are a little scary some days, but I hear you. You're just talking about communication. And again, what's the dynamic world of communication? How do we invest in it with each other? I always think about social media too, in terms, and specifically to this conversation, is how do we do shout outs to each other, right? So like, how can I acknowledge something that's happening in one of the reservations up north, that because I've continually been impressed by a lot of the creative industry business work that's going on, both the actual businesses as well as this development support there for businesses with many of the tribes.
Yeah, and we need internet connection. A lot of those folks out in the rural communities don't have that connection to data, and data's king. And if we're not connected, we're not going to be able to supercharge anything.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to note, I work closely with Little Eagle Arts Foundation, which is a beautiful network of intertribal artists and other creative business owners from the 11 federally recognized tribes that also associate to the Western Great Lakes or here in Wisconsin. And, one of the things we're working on is they've been doing pop-up marketplaces on tribal lands, but also sometimes in other lands. Sometimes they lead, sometimes another entity like a festival will invite them in. But, for me, I've been enjoying these pop-ups myself for years, and we brought a question. I work closely with Executive Director Melanie Talmadge Science on, what does it look like to make a permanent home now? What does the intertribal space look like, right? That actually, again, might be for a broader intersection of the creative industry. So this has just been a really inspiring part of my experience this year, is kind of getting deeper into that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Please, go ahead.
And the Milwaukee Intertribal Circle is brand new. We're a month and a half old. So that's one of our drivers is housing, but on top of that, it's arts. And with the Native American community, it's always been arts and connecting them from the outside world. From the very early ages of tourism, it was with arts and there's dancers. My great grandmother used to do the dance troops for the people from Minocqua when she was in Lac du Flambeau. And my grandfather down here did all the stuff, put the headdress stuff on, even though we were not from the tribe that wore the headdress. But he did all those things to get the art moving and and make those connections.
Yes.
So we have to step outside of our circles sometimes and make those connections.
Yes. Thank you so much, Paul. Catherine, what do you think is going to supercharge all these amazing creative businesses we have around us?
Thank you for the question, Sarah. And I think of the traditional economic development infrastructure that exists, and how do we think about pivoting those resources or making them broader in their understanding of what art, whether it's space or just place to gather, what art brings into those places, and then think about how do we direct some of those resources in a way that support creating those spaces. And so, for example, if we're doing housing, how do we have a set aside that creates the creative space within housing development, so that residents and/or area artists have a space to come and mash up and collaborate and meet? And so, how do we think about that, not just project by project, but as a community, that this is a commitment that we want to make, that we have to create those intentional spaces and places for people to mash up and have those sort of creative opportunities. I also think of the flow of money, and you were sharing the capital stack that you had to go through and build in order to build out this wonderful space. And so for some of the traditional resources that exist, either from the state level or the county level, even the organization that I work for now, and I'm sorry, I didn't even introduce myself. So
please. I mean, I'm interested in what you're saying, but yes, if you want to add that you do represent here.
Yeah, I'll bring that in now. So I'm Catherine Dunn. I now work for the Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative, and we do small business lending, coaching, support, counseling, training. And we are a women's development center, a women's business center. There's several of them around the country, but there have been several that I have spoken with who actually have a focus on supporting the arts with financial resources that are appropriate for artists, not something that doesn't work for somebody whose income may be sporadic and as they're getting going. Or who do counseling and training that is specific to, similar to what Marn has, taking the art and making it, monetizing it, and then running the business side like a business. So, but I also come from a long stint in philanthropy, supporting not just art but really helping I hope to foster those collaborations that result in some of the projects that we see around the community, but really supporting placemaking as part of community economic development, for example. And so I think of resource flow from that perspective, and that helps supercharge it community by community. And I will also say the commitment in doing that by making this very place-based, that's the model that I have in my mind right now that I'm speaking to, the integration into community and inviting community in to help decide what that's going to be, so that it truly does reflect culturally folks who are in the neighborhood and folks who are going to be experiencing that art or that space or that place.
Yeah, so I'm glad you're at Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative. I know it's a return for you also from earlier in your career. Yeah, your organization has been an incredible partner for me also, just advising I've gotten around running a creative small business over the years, but I've sent many other creatives there. And we've been able to do some experimentation, last decade around how that small business development support that you offer, so loans, business planning, legal or accounting advising, any of it, right, that actually helps the art of the business run. How can some of that again be customized, or again cohorts be built with creatives, because it helps people stay steady and do that work, because it's not always easy to think about what does it need to be sustainable as a business. So thank you for that. Ray, yes, my neighbor also in Bronzeville, King Drive. What do you want to tell us about what you think is a good idea here?
Is this on?
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
Thank you, Sarah and Christy, for having me. My name is Ray Hill. I serve as the executive director of the historic King Drive Business Improvement District, number 8. We are one of 34 business improvement districts in the city of Milwaukee. We run through 5 prominent, very strong neighborhoods, and we also rest outside of the Bronzeville district, which is a development district with the emphasis on arts and culture. And I've always added commerce to that as well. Personally, I also serve on a number of economic development, housing boards statewide, and have been for a number of years. But naturally, we have an affinity for supporting arts and creatives. But your question around supercharging, I think, is similar to Paul's in the level of exposure. And so we always try to make sure that people see economic development as the intersection of rigor and wonder. And I think the biggest piece is that we need to figure out what and how to describe ROI. Because I think the biggest challenge that we have with businesses, whether in real estate development or in the commercial infrastructure, is what does that number equate to, and how does it relate back to the businesses? And so it's top of mind for us. And so we've tried to do creative ways into introducing creatives into the sector, whether it's by our art walk that we do every year during Bronzeville Week, offering scholarships, and really just introducing up and coming creatives on the visual side of, those who are, I would say, Milwaukee natives. I learned not to say local artists, but Milwaukee native artists, to really get them to the forefront and then learn the business acumen side of how to be a creative and how to be paid for your talent and treasure. So I think if we can continue that conversation of really directing the creative piece to the money, I think we would see a different culture here related to the arts.
Well said. We had a moment with the Bruce City Match program where we did a business crawl in September, up and down King Drive. And I was really impressed by how many creative small businesses through that program have now moved into bricks and mortar space, and others who are incubating, right? They're doing their business plan. And I give you and your team a lot of credit, along with that program, for just making that a reality. It takes a certain kind of suggestion, I imagine, from you, meaning, maybe they're in Bronzeville and on King Drive already, maybe they're not, exactly which building to put them in. Again, support for still maybe concepting some of what's going to make them sustainable from a revenue perspective. So yeah, I'd just love to hear if there's anything specifically you've done with creatives that you find useful.
So I'll first say thank you. But secondly, I won't take credit, because this is, I think, probably 2 decades, maybe 3 decades worth of work that we're now seeing come to fruition. For the last 3 years, we've focused mainly on retention because of COVID, right? It changed the overall landscape of how we look at business, and retail is different. So we really focused on those businesses that offer an experience, that lend inside like what a creative is. So Bronzeville Collective is a great example of 30 plus creatives, right? They have been there for quite a while and started through the original Bruce City Match pop-up. But of course, making sure that they have the support that they need through the ebbs and flows of business. Honeybee Sage is a great one, where I got my earrings from. Shameless plug. But again, you go in, there's a wellness cafe, but the energy that you receive and you feel is ever changing, right? You don't leave the same. And so there's a number of businesses that have that very specific, unique experience that once you are there, you want to come back and you want to tell somebody else about it. But more importantly, we've really invested in the outside aesthetic of what it feels like to be on King Drive, and particularly Bronzeville. So people know once you hit that area, you know where you are. And you know that you're on King Drive. And so that's been the focus that we've really tried to look at, the multi-prong of like what this ecosystem feels like. So it's not just business, right? There's layers to it. And of course, we love collaboration. So Bruce City Match was a great vehicle for us to really bring those resources to those businesses.
Well said. I mean, it's a complex task to build a cultural district based on this beautiful history that's there, right? You know, and I come into that conversation having worked with Homeworks Bronzeville, or rehabbing city foreclosures for artists to own and occupy for the last few years. And I've grown to, appreciate the complexity. Like, how do we want to understand what Bronzeville is? How do we want to understand what a cultural district is? Like,
we also, I just have to shout out our alderwomen as well, because just looking at, economic development differently with the arch program and ensuring that there's not just this, there's not just galleries, right? There's live workspaces, there's Homeworks Milwaukee, right? There's green space, there's the ability to activate commercial corridors in a different way. There's also strategy with the Bronzeville Advisory Committee where there's, intentionality on what comes in that area that helps reflect the arts and culture district. So there is a number of different entities that are really helping doing the work and stewarding the efforts to ensure that it's not lost upon, hey, we got a new building or there's new development, which is great, but we want to ensure that the historical fabric of the neighborhood remains and continues.
Yes, another art form. Keep identifying the art in all this. It brings a question up for you, Catherine. Again, working with Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative now. A long tenure with Greater Milwaukee Foundation, another Bronzeville neighbor for us. And I'm curious, again, if you've seen particular things work well with businesses you might associate, again, to the creative industries, whether it's more typical like art and design business, or whether it is more of those community businesses that, again, are helping, food or other things that we might associate as culturally important. It's a lot of small business, basically. So, like, what have you seen work well to support that kind of small business?
So similar to what we were talking about the last panel of creating some of those networks, is making sure that the small businesses are feeling supported by each other, and that they also understand their own value, and that they're able to constantly promote themselves based on that value and not I was going to say not compromise. That's not realistic. But the more that the small businesses are supporting each other, it sort of creates this cycle where if one is having problem, they reach out to the other and they build their own network. So I think that's been one element, is making sure that the businesses are staying connected to each other. And then the other is really, again, making sure that we're providing, the royal we are providing the right tools and the right resources to help them with their business, whether they're artists or they have the honeybee sage, is a great example too. The artisan part of it, they're going to do so exceptionally well and beautiful, but it's the business piece of it. And so making sure that whether it's WIBIC or it's foundations or it's bids, that there are entities out there that can support and be a resource for those small businesses, and that they know that, and that they feel welcome, that just because they're one kind of business and there's other businesses in the area, that they're welcome to that table as well. And so making sure that they feel like that's part of their network. I think that's been one of the critical factors that we see with the folks that we work with now. We just had our big annual event today, and we had a marketplace, and so we had about 80 of our clients come out.
Cool.
And a lot of them are artisans, and they make beautiful leather bags, or they make soaps, or they make whatever it is. But so many of them, you see how they connect with each other and they support each other. They push out on social media pictures of themselves tagging the other business that they're with. So there is this network that they're creating themselves, and we have to support that. And I think that's what's going to help them continue to grow is that they feel like they have, like Angela said, they have peers. And they're experiencing some of the same kinds of struggles and triumphs that, the person across the room is experiencing.
Yeah, and again, failures are part of the learning, right? Like
Absolutely.
failures are chocked full of information to
Mhm.
grow from.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Any other thoughts, Paul, about what you've seen work particularly well with small businesses, in the creative industries?
Like the panel said, it's about support.
Yeah.
I mean, the chamber offers support through grants when we have them. We try to offer opportunities and sponsor like the Red Magic Festival that takes place in Jackson Park every August with Harmony Hill, and all the artists are able to attend that. But it's just not about support. You got to wear their stuff. You got to get out there and flex their gear. But you have to know their stories.
Yes.
As a panelist said before, storytelling is so important. And we have to help those folks craft their stories.
Yeah.
But I've never known an artist who wanted to be a grant writer. I've never known an artist who wanted to be a business person. They want to be
Right.
artists. So they want to create. So we
Yeah.
got to help them and support them so they can be artists. And then, we can help them with the back office stuff. So they get their taxes done. So they get their taxes done correctly. And Chamber has classes for that. And just that, ultimate infrastructure support, and make sure they have opportunities, and make sure that you build that network and that synergy that we need in the Native community to get outside in the rest of the world.
Yeah. Well said, Paul. Yeah, I'm going to do a couple shout outs. Yes, Honeybee Sage and Wellness. My favorite place is go and have a tea, but also fantastic for holiday shopping. So I was going to say, I get all of this very customized teas for my loved ones. And I'm going to also shout out one of my Little Eagle Arts Foundation collaborators, Leah Winishek, Earth Designs by Leah. This is birch bark that she just carefully constructed into jewelry. So it's true, right? Like, back to what Lynn was telling us too about, fashion is life. We're all making decisions all the time about how we express ourselves with our bodies.
The bravest thing in the world is to be an artist. You get to expose yourself to the world, and not a lot of people are willing to do that. So I'm always giving props. I'm too scared to be an artist, so I always give them props and give them thanks for all their creativity.
Yeah. Well, excellent color sensibility. I'm going to shout out for that warm purple right now.
It's an Oneida thing. It's not a Minnesota Viking thing. It's our people believe in the wampum, and I'm trying to represent the wampum.
Awesome.
So this is all about the purple and white and the Oneida and the Haudenosaunee people.
Yeah.
I can't stand the Vikings.
You're doing a good job. I just want to say Oneida Arts Program is one of the more impressive ones I've seen, again, for small business support to artists. Really beautiful work. Okay, we're going to do one more video transition. Actually, Paul's going to stay up with me here for our last group. But thank you again, all of you. It's been wonderful to have you as a combination. Okay, we're back. It's there's a lot of little conversations going today. One more group, everybody. One more group, then we're gonna let you be free. I just want to note that that was a recent reel of some of what we do here at Washington Park Media Center. And I have to say, one of the joys of in the last year has been our partnership with Teens Grow Green. So even our space and media producers, some of whom are behind cameras right now today, it comes from that collaboration. They come here and hang out with us once or twice a week, and we apprentice, so they're learning specific skills here. But then we also go out and we go out and do filming sessions together. We also do studio filming here, and again, sometimes they work with us on other projects we have going professionally. So, just going to give a shout out to my greens. Whew, okay. Thank you. This is important. We're going to talk about action now. So thank you all for being here. So looking to 2025, right? And this is a moment going on. in our political landscape here, those of us who share these U.S. lands. But also it's a cultural moment, right? We learned a lot coming out of our election and all that's come with it. And so I just want to give you each moment to talk about what actions do you think are a good use of our time right now so that we can actually encourage investment in the creative industries? And again, understanding it is a pivotal growth area of the Wisconsin economy right now. So again, we heard that I earlier mentioned, that 12 billion industry that's there, but we know this can grow. So again, what do you think is going to help get to that growth of the economy? And again, how this is all here. These industries are here to express what culture is. What are our lives like? What is our sense of place like, and our sense of being together as a people? I'm just going to start with you, Marjorie, if you don't mind. Introduce yourself again and answer my question, please.
So my name is Marjorie Rucker. I am the executive director of an organization called the Business Council, where we work with businesses and teach them how to engage in supply chains. But the hat I'm wearing today is with the Ethnic and Diverse Business Coalition, which is a coalition of 15 different chambers of commerce and CDFIs, or community development financial institutions, that basically come around the table and advocate for policies, procedures, et cetera, that either positively or negatively affect the businesses that we serve here in the state.
Yeah. So what actions do you recommend to support all those, your view of all this business activity that's going on?
Absolutely. So two things that I think entrepreneurs one thing entrepreneurs can take advantage of right now today is a new statewide directory called Widen. So it's Widen, WIDEN .biz. And it is where you can create a very robust listing of your business. You do have to be a business in the state of Wisconsin, so registered to do business. But if you have less than 100 employees, it's a beautiful way for you to get visibility by consumers, as well as larger entities or companies that might want to do business with you. So that is like a very low-hanging fruit, small action. It is free to create that listing. We are intentional about that because we want to make sure that it says as inclusive as possible to all industries and small businesses or businesses with less than 100 employees. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I've noticed through doing this work in the last 18 years is really helping us as what we call technical assistance providers, or people that support the business community here in the state of Wisconsin, communicate better so that we're not losing businesses through the cracks, right? When businesses come to us for help as TA providers, we're always giving them a laundry list of things to do, but we also recognize and respect the fact that they're small businesses. They're wearing all of the hats a lot of the times. And so it's hard sometimes for them to do follow-up with 15 different entities, right? Depending on what their needs are. So we have a tool called the Wisconsin Technical Assistance Referral Tool that is specifically for TA providers and financial providers in the state of Wisconsin to communicate across the state, region, city, or whatnot, so that when a business comes to us, if I want to refer them to you or anyone else, I can literally do that through that tool, which is really, really nice because it helps to streamline communication. We can all see what's going on with that business and make sure that they're not falling through the cracks.
These are online tools, it sounds like.
They
correct?
are. Yes, they are platforms. They are online tools, but like I said, very accessible and gaining a lot of visibility.
Yeah, so I appreciate that you're bringing our attention to tools.
Yes.
Right? And something, again, that could strengthen inside the creative industries, but still locate the creative industries to a wider network of businesses going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for making those investments. They sound really powerful.
Yeah, they're really cool.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Carolyn, yeah.
Well, I have to say that going in this final panel has made things very difficult because I was so inspired by everyone that was speaking and thinking, oh, I can relate to this. I can relate to this. Excuse me. My name is Carolyn Nelson Kavayets. I am here on behalf of Create Wisconsin, which is Wisconsin's arts advocacy agency. But also, I am a small business owner from Superior, Wisconsin. I have owned a performing arts school in Superior for 34 years. It is a little school that I started when I was still in high school, and I did it as a direct response to recognizing that there was a need for arts-based programming in our community. Anyone that was, my age that wanted to be involved in performing arts always had to go across the bridge to Duluth. And it's wonderful. They have fantastic programming there and things like that. But I thought, well, there's really nothing here in my community for kids like me. And so I just decided to start my own program, and then figured that, that was just going to be something that I did through high school. And then I was going to move on to college and do other things. But, as life happens, the program ended up growing very rapidly because there was such a need for kids in our community. And so I decided to stay in Superior to go to college, and then through graduate school and things like that. And finally, I met my husband, and we got married when I was in my very early 30s. And we moved out of our community and moved to the Twin Cities area for a short time. And our performing arts school was still happening. We still, it was still up and running and things like that, but we had relocated our very young family to the Twin Cities area. And after our daughter was born, I thought, what am I doing here? I want to go back home. That's where our roots are. That's where our family is. That's where my business is. Let's go back home to Superior. And so we did. And so that was nearly 20 years ago now. But when I came back to Superior, we had 4 very small children, all very close in age. And, I was thinking to myself, I want to be able to raise my family here in northern Wisconsin, and I don't want my children to feel as they grow that they have to move out of the city of Superior. They have to move out of Wisconsin in order to access the arts and culture and all of the things that I was searching for, and then I came back home for. And so I started to really reevaluate what I was doing with this small business and how I could invest more in my community and arts and culture. And of course, I had been familiar with Create Wisconsin and the Wisconsin Arts Board, but then, that was something where, Karen and George from the Wisconsin Arts Board or Ann from Create Wisconsin would come to Superior once a year, and we would have these lovely conversations, and then I would see them again in another year. And I thought, it's really important for me to connect my community with other communities throughout the state of Wisconsin. I mean, we're 6 hours north. It was about a 6.5 hour drive to come today. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to, we're talking about all of these things that are happening, and as a northern Wisconsin resident, oftentimes it's easy to look at these things and say, well, that's for people in other communities, Milwaukee or Madison, that's not for us. And after talking to Ann and really getting more involved with Create Wisconsin, I understood that it isn't, the types of things that are happening in, communities that are focused on creative economy and arts and culture aren't just for large cities. They're for my community too. But in order to make things like that happen in my community, I really needed to invest. And one of the things that I always would think of when I would hear Ann speak is, she's so good. Like you had said earlier, early on, she's great at statistics. She can remember the numbers. She knows all the things to say. And I was like, Ann, I want to get involved, but I can't remember those numbers. I can't throw out the things like you can. So, but she would, she encouraged me, just tell your story. And so that's what I started doing. And, I started by attending Arts Wisconsin Day, which is now Create Day, and things like that. But I was terrified to go walk over to the state capitol and tell my story. I was like, I can't say the numbers like Ann can. I don't know how to do those things. She was like, just go talk to people. And the very first time that I sat down with my representative, he was like, I know you. You're excellent Versailles, Mom. And I'm like, I am. And he's like, my son plays hockey with your twins. And I was like, what? You're a real person from my community? And so now that I've had the opportunity to really invest my time in my community and helping to bring arts and culture and creativity to boost my community. One of the things that I encourage people, not only from, up north in Superior, but throughout the state of Wisconsin, is to just tell your story. Just jump in, get involved, and know that your story is going to impact others, and it can make a difference, and you can make change, but you just really have to jump in and get involved. So for 2025, that's what I would just really encourage people to do. Yeah, so thanks for sharing that story, and thank you for making the trek. It's very important to have you here from Superior.
key voice in this conversation. And I do appreciate the investment you've made for decades as a small creative business owner there, creating opportunity, again, for experiences, but still that space you hold when you model, I can be a creative small business, here in Superior. It's really important. And I just also like your story about talking to a politician, right? Sometimes, we actually do have to talk to our state legislators. That is going to affect whether some of the state money moves more to the creative industries, whether, again, for the film tax incentives and office we talked about with Katie, or, just still getting a general increase to the Wisconsin Arts Board dollars, because we are very low on the spectrum of investment from our state government.
Well, and when she was talking about the concept, the film incentive and things like that, that's another thing, another story that just, really pulls it all together, and why it's so important for people in smaller communities or northern communities or communities that feel disconnected to get involved, because the film industry has had a major impact up north, especially in northern Minnesota in recent years. And because of the film incentives and things that are happening in Minnesota, unfortunately, I'm a 5-minute drive from Duluth, but it's very difficult as folks in the creative industry in our community to be hired for those types of projects, or to take advantage of the benefits of the millions of dollars that are going into northern Minnesota and the film industry right now, because we don't have those incentives. And then once we started talking about that, I was like, oh my gosh, the people in Milwaukee are facing the same thing, and the people in Madison are facing the same thing. And then it makes you realize that, if you are in a community that's farther away from these larger cities, your story isn't that different. You have the same type of impact. And all of a sudden, you build these relationships and you build this network and you create a common understanding. And when you're working together, it just makes the whole entire message stronger. And, the same goes for when we're talking about the Regional Leaders Network. That's one of the reasons why creating and building the Regional Leaders Network is so important, because when we are, we have so many commonalities, and when we're voicing our opinion and sharing our stories and working together as a statewide group, as opposed to people from all of these separate communities, it just makes our message stronger.
We're talking so much about alignment today. I love it. Paul, will you back up in the group here? I just want to note again, want to do a shout out to Carol Ann, who wasn't feeling well, was supposed to join us again from the Beyond Tribute initiative that you're part of, along with a number of other really amazing Native cultural leaders. Do you want to share a little bit from that perspective?
Yeah, I'll wear my MIC hat, my Milwaukee Intertribal Circle hat for this panel. Excuse me, and thanks again. The Tribute to Survival is about saving a particular exhibit at the Milwaukee Public Museum. As many of us know, they are moving to another building, a much smaller building, but a much newer building and a safer building for everyone to be in. So that's happening. So all the protests to try to stop it, it's going down. As part of that move, a lot of the exhibits aren't going to make it. It's going to be more screen-based. It's going to be more interactive type of museum. So the big Smithsonian exhibits that we're all used to seeing it and growing up with in Milwaukee are going to be 86th and eliminated from the museum experience. Part of that exhibit is the formerly spinning powwow grand entry exhibit that was started in the early 90s and finished in the mid 90s of Native community members from Milwaukee. Back then, before the casinos were heavily introduced to our nations, all we had was each other. My great-grandfather came to Milwaukee in 1933, and my family has been serving the Native community since then for 92 years now, for housing, for arts, for everything, for jobs. But this particular exhibit came together because of all that, and because of the community that were this, when all we had was each other, and we had all these great leaders that put us where we're at today. From 1976 to 2025, the 11 tribal nations have gone through warp speed economic development. My tribe started with 3 cigarette stores, and people would come from out of town and buy tax-free cigarettes, and that was it. That was our economic plan until I was 4 or 5, and then is built and it built, and now we're one of the major drivers and major employers throughout the state. But as far as the Milwaukee Intertribal Circle and Carol Ann and a tribute to survival exhibit, that exhibit's not making it. I mean, there's lots of rules that I'm finding out about museums and what's the part of the collection and what's not part of the collection and what's official and what's not official. That's not official. That's not making it. I have a number of younger cousins and my younger brother were all plaster casted for that exhibit. One of my younger brothers is the grass dancer. He's the only one making that cut to the next exhibit. So he'll be part of the exhibit going forward, but that's great for my family, but it's the rest of those who need someplace to go. And their plan was just to throw it in storage. And then we created this group that said, hey, that's not good enough for us.
Yeah.
And our history museums is very jagged. And we went into the first meetings very angry, understandably so. But as a matter of understanding of what we're trying to do, that the fire and pitchforks weren't going to get it done, we had to meet at the table and come together. And now we're filming a documentary on where the tribute started, where it's at now, and where it's going. And it's going to be used as an educational tool. And it's about building those bridges between commerce and business and arts, because we had to get it funded. So that's where I came in and did all my dealings and all the things I do and to connect people. And we got it funded. So now we're about building on that so we can have the educational tour to take around the state, because a lot of people don't know about the urban Native population. We had more natives in the Milwaukee area than anywhere else in the state, but we're often disrespected by our own people and often completely forgotten by the rest of the urban community. So it's a big thing for us to save this thing, and it's a big idea, but it takes a small group of people to start this, and it's become to what it is now.
I'll just say, I just became aware of the Beyond Tribute initiative this summer, actually at Red Magic Market in Jackson Park. You mentioned it. Amazing marketplace run by that Intertribal Artist Network. Yeah. And part of why I just thought might be a good place for us to land in this conversation today is, at one level you're talking about a museum exhibit, right? And then I remember from when I was younger, Milwaukee Public Museum, especially for me, growing up, it was an incredible, magical place. And every one of the exhibits, including, it's about survival, tribute to survival, right? Where I remember it being so powerful for me as a young person. And so I love the creativity that you and your group of leaders are working on right now. Like you're talking about making a documentary media project. You're talking about even, these are actual figurines, right? That were in a group, movement.
And my family, my friends, yeah.
Right. So whether it's going to be one or more figurines, like you're thinking really openly about what's another life to be had too. So I just want to say I appreciate the effort that you have going. I think it's really culturally, time sensitive at this, when we're talking still about visibility around Native cultural leaders. But I guess I also just wanted to offer, when we're talking about action again, there's still projects and initiatives, right? In addition to talking to our legislators, using some of the online networking and visibility tools like you're talking about, Marjorie, it's all this, right? And that's how do we use the skills that we have to actually, again, bring a new sense of life as well as bring a new visibility to what's happening.
And what's next?
What's next? Thank you.
And one of the things when we're talking about what can we do for 2025 for those of you who are local or in the Milwaukee area, the governor is holding a listening session next Tuesday, I believe, December 10th. And so even if you're not sure what to say, show up. Your voice can't be heard if you don't at least show up. And maybe you'll be inspired to say something. And even if you're not, there will be other people there that you can be there to show your support.
Yeah, next Tuesday, late afternoon at the Thrive On, our new development in Brownsville. So yes, showing up for me, talking about film incentives. You want to close us out, Marjorie?
So I was told that I need to talk about Marketplace, Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'll be there.
So awesome. So that is happening the 10th through the 12th. The 10th is online. There's an online academy, and then the 11th will be in person down at the Baird Center, and then Thursday all day will be in person. So there's a lot of, if you are a business owner in the state of Wisconsin, you should be at Marketplace. Okay,
100%.
Marketplace has really good seminars, gives you really good information about what's out there to help you grow and build your business. You make great connections and networks with other business owners, as well as other organizations in the state that are doing work around businesses, learning about procurement opportunities with different corporations throughout the state of Wisconsin. So really, really good time. And there's an awesome expo hall, which Wyden will be there to sign your business up if you need help doing that. So yes, Marketplace, www.marketplacewisconsin.com is where you can find your tickets, but be there.
Yes, indeed. Highly suggest that December 10th date to learn how to apply for these contracts that you'll be hopefully running into at the next 2 days. So it's an amazing event to take place. My first one was last year, and it blew my mind of the opportunities that you could come across from arts to Department of Defense.
Sounds like a beautiful social experience too, just to see that all in one room in Wisconsin style, huh? So thank you. I'm just have you sit here just for a minute. Christy, you want to just come back up and close us out? Join us on the couch. My collaborator, Christy.
I'll slide right in. Yeah. Well, I just want to thank everybody for coming here today. It was really engaging conversation. And for the people who joined us in the room, who we invited, because we know a lot of you some of you are connected to each other, but many of you may have not seen each other in a while, or were like, oh, I know that name and I want to talk to them. So that was sort of the other intention, I guess, around this event. I will be remiss if I don't thank our sponsors for the series. So UWITA works with a lot of banks. So I want to thank Associated Bank, Chase, Puremax, and U.S. Bank, and then the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation for their financial support of this series this year in particular, which allows us to not only host this, but partner up with folks and then also support our local businesses. We've provided some food for those in person. So I want to give a shout out to Lisa K Catering, who just recently opened her business in this neighborhood too.
Right down the street. Yes.
So, and all of our guests and speakers and visitors who came from other parts of the state, thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge and expertise with us. I always learn so much. I've been doing this work for 18 years too, and I'm always amazed at, we're the Urban Economic Development Association, but I learned so much from my colleagues across the state, and I realize how much more we have in common versus how different we are. So.
Yes, and thank you again. We've talked about this conversation for many years, so I'm glad we brought it to life. And I just want to thank all of you in the room and online. So just to note again, this is recorded. It will be online. We encourage you to watch it again or share it out. And just want to thank our partners, Create Wisconsin, Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, Rural Urban Flow, and thank you, Christy, and your team for amazing work. So I'll sign off from Washington Park Media Center. Thank you very much.
Thank you.